The sport of off-road racing is full of incredible stories, wild characters, legends, and even villains. We cover it all on offroadracer.com, but there's only so much we can put down in an article. Sometimes we have to dig a little deeper, and that means sitting down with some of our industry's most influential characters and hitting record. Welcome to the Off-Road Racer podcast, a Mad Media production, made exclusively for offroadracer.com. Each month, we'll go beyond the dirt into the homes, shops, and lives of the most interesting and game-changing icons of our sport. You'll hear about their history, success, failure, and everything in between as we pull back the curtain and reveal the stories of their lives. I'm your host, Matt Martelli, and this is the Off-Road Racer podcast. I'm Matt Martelli. This is Off-Road Racer Podcast, and I'm sitting here with my good friend, Jeff Proctor. Jeff, what's going on, man?
Hey, a lot. We've got a lot going on in the old Honda camp.
Yeah, let's talk first about your new truck. It's pretty exciting.
Yeah, it is. We're thrilled to be able to bring a Honda trophy truck to the playground, so to speak, and it's been a long road. It's been 9 years since the inception of the program, and we should probably talk a little bit about that, how that came to pass. But you were a big part of that. But it's been 9 years, and we kind of got to a point where we were kind of bringing a gun to a knife fight with a Class 7, and you want to go out there. We're competitors, right? We want to go out there and compete, and we want to push ourselves. We want to push the team. We want to push the engineers, and so we're like, hey, we've got to do this. We can't just keep bumping around in Class 7 and starting behind all the side-by-sides and just going to battle every race, with ourselves. And so finally, a couple years ago, we worked with Honda, and here we are now with a trophy truck. And, this is our first race, and we're going to give it all she's got. It's going to be a bit of a test. And, like with anything that's kind of new to off-road, it's going to take some development. And, I'm not going to be shy about, there's still a lot of development to be done with this truck to get it to where we think it needs to be in the trophy truck class. But, we're here. We qualified 7th, and I think we're going to have a good day tomorrow.
Yeah, it's really cool. I mean, it kind of is a throwback to, the era of the Toyota, right? So, when Ivan was dominating the Toyota, that wasn't a big block engine, you know what I mean? It was a smaller, lighter vehicle, with a 6-cylinder engine, right? And, I think that's one of the things that's interesting about the evolution of our sport is like there was a time period where turbos and superchargers were outlawed, with the theory being that somehow protected the domestic manufacturers from the foreign manufacturers. Now we're living in, the new world, I guess you call it, or, whatever, where, the overwhelming majority of vehicles out on the street are small engine, vehicles that are, from foreign companies like
Sure.
Toyota and Honda. So to not have that represented in off-road, I think is a disservice. So, going back, I mean, you were a Honda dealer, but you still could have, as a racer, in having experience, you still could have taken the easy path and been like, hey, I'll buy this truck. It works. That era. It's like, hey, it's a geyser. I'm gonna go out there and race and have a good time. Why did you choose to take this path?
I think at the core of who I am, I'm a competitor, and I just didn't feel like it made business sense for me to go out and spend my own money to go racing. And if I could get somebody to pay for our racing and build what we would call internally as an IndyCar quality program, kind of bringing the golf shirts to off-road racing, that we could do it and we could make a sustainable program. And so from the get-go, it was never about bringing any of my own money to the table. It was, hey, how can we make this work at a very professional level with, all sponsorship funding? And that was our goal, and we've stuck to that for 9 years.
Yeah, I mean, the thing I find really interesting about it is your willingness to prove to this massive global corporation the value of off-road racing. You know, like Honda didn't wake up one day and say, "Hey, let's do this." That was you, and you know, initially, you know, your own time and money, you know, risking that to try and do this. And this was an area where, frankly, they had zero interest in.
Yeah, you know, it's I'll be honest. It's a tough road to try to go against the grain when you have, you know, a company like Honda that's been in, you know, pavement racing their entire lives, and that's who they are, you know, aside from supercross, motocross. And you know, I think that they like the idea, but it was still like unproven to them, and ultimately they didn't start to see the real value in off-road, I don't think, until we had a show truck and they started taking the show truck to their events across the country, and they realized that this trophy truck, so to speak, that was in their booth in mid-Ohio was like the darling of their booth. And they're like, oh, okay, we need to have this at more of these shows because it's bringing people into our booth. And, you know, nothing against the Honda Civic, but the Honda Civic's, you know,
It's
great.
not sexy.
It's not sexy, right? Yeah. It's not badass.
It may be the thing that everybody's going to buy, but it's not sexy.
Yeah, and a trophy truck is badass. So whether you're in, you know, the Midwest or on the West Coast, you know, people gravitate to off-road race trucks and especially trophy trucks. And I think that kind of woke them up, and they're like, okay, all right, we like this now. We like it. And, you know, here we are 9 years later with a trophy truck.
It's interesting, too, because to me it seems so obvious, and part of this is my bias, your bias, being from West Coast off-road culture.
Sure.
They're like, okay, so, you know, we're riding Honda motorcycles. We got a Honda generator, and what do? We load it up into an F-150. I mean, they're missing the biggest spend in that group of people, right? And you know, now Honda has a truck too, and you know, I don't know if in the future they're gonna build something, but my guess would be they will. But I just, you know, I appreciate it, and I think it's really cool because I think that a lot of corporations kind of get caught in their own loop, right, of what they know, and they need to be pushed outside of that. And even in the history of Honda in particular, like they've raced for what, like 100 years or something crazy like that, you know? So it's not that they don't know racing. It's just that they've never had the understanding of the value of off-road racing. And, you know, you did that for them.
For sure. At the core of American Honda, or actually global Honda, is, you know, Soichiro Honda said when he started the company, he said, if Honda does not race, there is no Honda. And it's a big part of their culture. And it's been exciting to be able to bring off-road racing to, you know, a pavement racing culture.
Yeah, you and I had some conversations very early on as you were developing the program, and you know, talking specifically about their engine package, you know, that they had developed primarily, I think, for IndyCar. And you know, I had this experience in you know, the car building that we did for Jim Cano with the Subarus, where you know, I understood that you could take a 4-cylinder, a 6-cylinder engine, turbo it, supercharge it, whatever, and get a ton of immediate horsepower out of it. And then, you know, as the electronic mapping technology came along, then you had more control over that. So it wasn't like you weren't just building a time bomb. You know, you could manage that engine. And clearly, you know, from what they've done in other forms of racing, they understand that and they know that and have that technology.
Yeah, the engine program has been incredible from the start. It's a 3.5 liter V6 twin turbo. It was primarily developed for IMSA sports car racing, so it's found in the Acura like Daytona prototype class. And then they ran it in the NSX and also the Acura TSX. In the IMSA series. It's also raced in Le Mans, you know, 24 Hours Daytona, Sebring. So it's an endurance sports car engine. You know, we looked at the IndyCar engines for a while. The challenge with the IndyCar engines, we're still looking at IndyCar engines because they now have a hybrid electric. The IndyCar engines turn at 12,000 RPMs. And for you, you know, engineering nerds out there, it's pretty tough with shock load and off-road to take a 12,000 RPM spinning engine and put in the the gear reductions to get your gearbox and your rear end to last with shock load. So, we've worked through that equation with the engineers quite a bit, and we just can't find the right solution just yet for a 12,000 RPM IndyCar motor. But it's not off the table in the future.
Sure.
So there's a lot of different options that we could go with Honda racing engines, but right now the tried and true is the 3.5 liter twin turbo. It's found in, the mini Honda minivan. It's in the Ridgeline truck. It's in the Acura MDX. Any V6 out there is really the block that we're racing.
And what is the horsepower range that you can get out of that engine platform?
I can kind of speak in some ranges. I really shouldn't be talking numbers because it really varies, right?
Sure.
And I'm not trying to dodge the question. I'll explain why it varies. But this engine, you can see anywhere from 550 on a very conservative level, which is what we raced in Class 7. And this engine can produce, over 700 horsepower. Quite a bit less than most full-size, V8 trophy trucks. But the power delivery is different. And when you have 700 horsepower going through a sequential 6-speed gearbox, you can keep that engine where it needs to be in the RPMs and really produce the power that you need when you need it. So we believe by cutting a little weight out of the trophy truck chassis, we have a lighter weight chassis with less horsepower that with a 2-wheel drive, we still think that we can be fairly competitive in trophy truck and go out there and compete and, hold our own.
Yeah, it's going to be cool to see because I again, being, a fan of V6 turboed engines, and what Kurt Crawford did with the engines that he built for us for the Gymkhana cars, I was really impressed, especially like you're saying, is it stayed in the power band where we needed it versus the grunt or the slow build of a V8. It had a lag where it was like it delivered you powered more on the top than in that part that you needed when you're shooting out of the corners, right? Mm-hmm. And that 0 to 30, let's say, right? It was like, okay, build, and then the power band was, a little bit higher. So yeah, it's cool. And what I like is I like more players coming to the table, right? Hopefully other manufacturers look at this and they go, look at what Honda's done. You guys have made such a big splash, not just in our culture, but outward, where I think a lot of people, I remember going and doing the first SEMA and unveiling the truck and, just watching people go, holy shit, this is legit, it's serious, it looks good, it performed well, all the pieces got put together and it wasn't like, hey, we did a SEMA build and then we crushed it afterward like everybody else is doing, you know what I mean? So I thought it was really cool. I thought it was really meaningful too from a cultural perspective. The effect that had, and then one of my other favorite things, kind of favorite moments was, obviously Honda was, a pillar of the tuner culture, and tuner culture had this weird end to it where it's not over; it just slowed way down, and a part of it was that audience aged out, right? So when you're 35 or whatever and you have a serious job, you don't really want to pull up to your job in a tuned Honda. You want to have an Acura, moving up the, maybe a BMW at some point, et cetera. And so that audience kind of aged out. But I saw a lot of those guys look at this truck and they're like, okay, shit, this is badass.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, the culture's still there, and I think a lot of the youth today, I think it's starting to resurge. To be honest with you, we kind of have a small pulse on it, and the youth today is into the '90s tuner cars, and that's what they're buying. Actually, I'm learning a lot from having a 15-year-old son, and that's what all his buddies are into. I mean,
Yeah.
he's going to be driving next year, and guess what he wants? I want to get him a pickup truck so he can throw his mountain bike in it or whatever. Nope, Dad. I want a '93 Prelude.
Right.
That's what he wants, and that's what all of his friends want. So I think it might start coming back. But to your point, our new trophy truck that's out there today, we put a Type R logo on the back of it just
That's
to kind of poke the tuner car market a little bit and to say, hey, we got a Type R, our Ridgeline, the only one in the world.
Well, it was cool from a cultural perspective too. Like I remember like the big shows like Hot Import Nights and and then you had the movies, kind of feed into it and stuff. And I had a lot of friends that were, part of that culture and then crossing over into drifting. And it was very like they championed the high horsepower, 4-cylinder and 6-cylinder engines. And, it made it cool, it made it one of these things where it was like that style and everything from a technology standpoint, it made everybody look at it and go, okay, wait, there are some superiorities to this platform, especially when you're shaving some weight out of the vehicle. Like everything doesn't have to be a Cadillac, with the giant, big block in it,
Yeah, I kind of want to go back to that conversation with the engine. Is that when you look at trophy trucks, we're really bringing kind of a knife to the trophy truck gunfight as the way that the industry currently perceives it. Because everybody's like, first it was like, high horsepower, 850, small blocks. Now everybody's going to these 1100 big blocks.
Yeah.
And you're like, Proctor, you're crazy. You're bringing a trophy truck that's got 700 horsepower to the table. And, my opinion is, I'm going to give you my disclaimer, is that I don't think that trophy truck racing is all in the engine. I actually think the deficiency of a modern day trophy truck is actually in the gearbox. Those turbo 400s are archaic.
Yep.
And when you go back to finding the gearbox to match where the engine needs to run in RPMs, when you get the power, when you need it, how you need it, that's what we're tuning for with our engineers, is to really maximize everything with this Honda platform. And, unfortunately, nothing against the Turbo 400 V8 trophy trucks, but, have you seen those guys on InCar? It's like, it's really a 2-speed gearbox. And so that's where I think the gap in trophy truck racing can be won is in that gearbox and in the tuning of the ECU. And do I think we can go out and compete against all-wheel drives? Probably not on a really good day. Probably not. I'm going to be realist with everybody.
Sure.
But I think with our gearbox and everything, we're gonna give it our best shot, and it's really going to test our team. And we've got a lot of growing to do, and we're up for the challenge.
No, that's really cool. And I agree with you. Like, let's go back to what the Turbo 400 is. It's not a gearbox that was invented for off-road. It was basically invented for street cars, I think in the 60s, right? So and we're doing things that, to all of the mechanics of the vehicle that they're not meant to do. So it's this like evolution of like, oh, we broke the rear gear. Now we need to make our own gears. Oh, the drive shaft, and on all the way down the line where eventually everything becomes very specific. I think there's a lot of deficiencies, even beyond the gearbox and strategy and things that you guys have done, marketing wise, et cetera, in bringing that into this market. And I also like the mind war of like, oh, this is what everybody else does. Okay, we're going to think differently,
right,
and we're going to attack, from this angle and, see what that does. And obviously it's, you've done that in UTVs, you've done that with your truck, and that's proven to be successful. I mean, let's talk a little bit about UTV racing.
Sure.
Because, Honda came out with a platform. They had the luxury of of coming out after kind of everybody had launched their vehicle.
Yeah, about 10 years later.
Right. So they were, you know, the upside is they were able to go, we're going to do it this way, you know, and they came out with a very unique platform that's very good, you know.
And in some cases, kind of underrated, to be honest
I think
with
it's severely underrated.
Yeah.
You know, and again, it's like it's very interesting thing having driven all the different UTV platforms, you know, and I'm like the guy who I go, yeah, I don't want a knife or a gun. I want a knife and a gun and a club and I want all of
Machete.
them, right? Yeah, because they prove out in different situations, and you know, the Honda UTV specifically, and having a gearbox and being able to shift, like I freaking love that.
It really is a game changer, to be honest with you. And I think you're seeing a lot of these other platforms starting to come to market and realize that the belt may not be the way of the future. And, you know, the Talon platform is solid. You know, it gets a little bit of slack for not having the amount of horsepower that the West Coast off-roaders need. But the reality is the Talon is always there at the finish line. And that's a big part of off-road racing when you have attrition rates of 50%. And, you know, it's always there. And the drivetrain, I can't say enough good things about this drivetrain. You know, going into the program, we didn't know what to expect. You know, we've had the program now for 4 years, the Talon program. And we were talking to Can-Am and Polaris teams, and they're talking about replacing the diffs every race. And, you know, we were getting these big parts budgets going. And the reality is it's a Honda. You know, they're durable. Honda does their durability testing, and we're not replacing the parts that a lot of these other manufacturers need to replace every race to go racing. And it's been a good learning curve for us, and you know, we're going to keep progressing the Talon platform.
Racing against your dad is something that 90% of the racers in the world will never get.
I've accomplished everything I wanted to do, and now he's just like taking the reins. I want to be remembered for being a huge part of short course, not just racing, keeping it alive, helping it grow. If it comes down to the last weekend and I'm in it, the boys better watch out.
Yeah, it's really cool. You know, the other thing that I really like, and it's a question, is, you know, you've put some really cool young talent in that vehicle and given some people opportunities that they may have not had. You know, why did you choose to go that path rather than like go get the guy who's winning and be like, hey, we're going to put you in this vehicle, let's go?
Well, I guess I'll say I'm a competitor. I'm still out there to win. But I think, you know, where much has been given, you know, much is expected, kind of thing. And I feel like our you know, blessed with the program and want to be able to give back and really develop the next generation of off-road. And, you know, we were sitting at kind of a crux in off-road on the West Coast where, you know, short course was kind of dying, and there was all these kids that had come up through short course that were racing mod karts that had a lot of talent. And when short course goes away, where are you going to take that talent? You know, not a lot of their parents were taking them to the motocross track. Well, we need to start grabbing this talent and bringing it into endurance off-road. And so that's what I was able to do. I was able to grab some really talented young short course racers when short course kind of died, and bring them into the Talon program and start to develop their skills as endurance off-road racers. And it takes a different skill set. It takes a lot of patience, you know, a lot of different things that are required for off-road that's not in short course. So I enjoy kind of the mentoring role and being able to bring these guys along. I mean, you look at, you know, Elliott Watson, you know, he's still racing. Look at Polvardi right now. He's a front runner in 6100, and you know, he's jumping into an all-wheel drive truck next year, so we're going to see him running up front. So that to me is rewarding, that we are able to bring these young kids along. And now I have Ethan Ebert. Ethan Ebert came up through our driver development program in a Talon and did really well, and now he's racing the Ridgeline. I've stepped aside due to some brain injuries, and it's exciting to see him out there wheeling the Ridgeline and you know, putting the Ridgeline on the box. So it's been quite the journey, and I don't think we're going to stop where we're at. We've got a lot of big plans in the works for the future to bring a lot more young talent into the program.
Yeah, again, that's really cool to see, and I agree 100%. Like the invention of trophy carts and then UTVs has created an influx of youth that we've never seen before. And I think the challenge going forward is cool. Like they move up the ranks in UTV, but then where do they go, right? The gap between, financially and also, talent wise, like, it's pretty easy to drive a UTV compared to a 6100, right? And, making that jump financially and, skill set, it's difficult. And I would say the majority of racers aren't going to be able to do it financially. So creating that bridge, between UTV racing and trophy truck racing or just truck racing in general, I think is critical.
Well, and not to mention the learning curve too of going from short course racing where you're at the same spot and then all of a sudden you're jumping in endurance off-road racing. There's a huge financial outlay for these parents, but not only that, there's a big learning curve to learn the logistics of our sport. And that's something that can't come overnight. You can't have just a coach show up at the track and get on a headset and coach your kid. I mean, you've got to have somebody that's there to help you learn the logistics and understand how to set up a proper race plan. And that's what I love to do. I love it.
Yeah, I was gonna ask you that question, but you answered it for me. Of like, I think that we, like I said, we've been friends, so we've known each other. But like watching you play chess, you know what I mean, with the logistics and everything else. And the other thing I also like watching is I like people that are, small-minded and dismissive, because it's a Honda or because, hey, he doesn't have a V8 in that or whatever it is. And then it's like, oh, guess who's on podium, right? And that's got to be very satisfying.
It is. And, we do like to play chess, and I'll just kind of throw this out there. The current trophy truck is getting about 1.5 miles per gallon if you're running a big block. We're getting 2.5 miles per gallon out of the Honda, and we have a 110-gallon fuel cell.
Right.
So for those of you that are listening, listen to our, do the math, figure out what our fuel strategy is, and there's a chance that we might be underpowered, but we'll be passing you while you guys are fueling your trophy truck.
Totally.
So, there's all these little games that you can play where you can find an advantage. And we're not going to let our 700 horsepower engine, stop us from competing out there. And we're going to do the very best we can. And if it's pit strategy, if it's a longer pit window, if we can get our tires to last longer, we're going to pull out every single stop that we can and have the very best team that we can to go out there and compete. Yeah.
No, you're right on in the sense of, like you said earlier, like a knife to a gunfight. I think it's more like a scalpel, right? It's because of the precision of it. It's this thing of like, you think about all these variables, fuel strategy, tires, driver fatigue. Like there's so many variables. Like it'd be cool to sit down and like build out a spreadsheet and be like, all right,
I have them. I have them.
Nice. and just go, okay, people, like this is what's happening. And like I'm, because of being on the promoter side, we're always, doing things to move data acquisition further. And, we talk about the future of what we're doing and being able to see, vehicle position, but not just vehicle position, but be able to get data from the engine and all the stuff so that people can go like, yeah, he's in front, but look at where his engine is fading. Like, how cool is that going to be of like, being able to see all that stuff in real time?
Yeah, he's running up front, but he's got quite a bit of alarms going on, his H2O or his oil temp. And yeah, real-time telemetry is a game changer for everybody, especially the fans.
Yeah, it's always funny when, I listen to Formula One and they're talking about these little minute track changes or the whatever. And I'm like, you have no idea like how many variables you're dealing with in off-road racing, and especially from a team management side of it. It's like you got to know your vehicle, you got to know your crew, you got to know the terrain. It's a different game at every race. It's like, Barstow, for example, like you go to Barstow and you're like, okay, it's rough, it's technical, we've got to be ready. You know, the chances of you getting a flat are super high, probably even more high than the mint course. So that's all stuff that you have to work into your strategy. You know, you make decisions like, do we drive as hard as we can and get a flat and you know, maybe be down for a few minutes, or do we back it down and not be down, you know, and be able to pass that guy when he's changing a tire? You know, there's so much that goes into it.
I live for those strategic moments.
Yeah.
I mean, that for me is what I enjoy. You know, stepping away from racing, that's the part that kind of fuels me now, is being able to kind of call the race over the radio, over the SATCOM, you know, using our technology and communicating real time with our racers with track position and making those kind of calls. That to me kind of fuels my fire.
Yeah. You know, do you enjoy that now more than racing?
Oh, that's a tough one. To be honest with you, I mean, I'm still a competitor at heart. So I've accepted the fact that my brain isn't probably ever going to be at a point where I can get back in a race car. So I've had to accept that, and it's been a tough road, to be honest with you. I kind of officially retired after the Baja 1000 last year in November, and you know, the timing was, you could say, probably pretty bad. I mean, we worked so hard to build a new trophy truck, and I'll never be able to drive the new truck that we've worked so hard for. So, you know,
Well, not in a race. Anyways.
well, not even in testing. My brain's just not at a point where I could even go out and test. And so I guess I could play the kind of the woe is me card, but you know, that's not really who I am.
Right.
And it's like, okay, now there's a new path in front of me, and I'm going to embrace this new path with this program. And that new path is just being a lot more strategic and managing, you know, the race as it comes and making those strategic calls. And that's what I enjoy, you know, in addition to kind of mentoring and bringing this next generation of young athletes up through the ranks.
All right, Chase, number 23, it's 2023. This championship's yours. Let's show these guys what's up.
Easy, boys. It's not over yet. Big dog still gotta eat.
Whatever you say, big dog. Seriously? These fools think I'm fried?
They know the deal.
Yeah, it's interesting too, because like you have so much racecraft knowledge, but also, you know, very successful in business, right? Do you think those two things are connected?
Oh, 100%. You know, a lot of people ask me, you know, how did you get into racing? I said I was a businessman first, and this racing team is a business for me. You know, and I became a racer second. And a lot of people that are racers first and they lack the business marketing knowledge, they struggle becoming from a racer and trying to become the businessman. And so, you know, the advice I give a lot of people is, you know, focus on your business first, and that'll make you a better team manager, a better, you know, you have a better race program and all those things, because you understand, you know, your sponsors and you understand what they need out of your program as a marketing company.
Yeah, it's really interesting too that, like, I would say the majority, if not, you know, a significant amount of the people who race with us are successful business people, and a lot of them bring that acumen of that, you know, that business discipline over into racing. I mean, I've had so many experience with different teams, and I always bring up the McMillans and how well organized, you know, their chase crews were. You know, they don't treat it like, it's not like, you know, beers and flip-flops. It's you know, that's after, you know, the race is done and all the work's done. It's very serious and very, you know, well planned and well executed.
Yeah, I think from the get-go, you know, like I was saying, is the vision for the program was to always create an IndyCar level program. And, you know, I think it starts with, you know, our appearance, the way that we look. You know, if you look at my guys out there right now, they're all going to be in black shorts. Every one of them is going to have a pair of black shorts on, black shoes on, and our team, you know, tech shirts is what we call them. And I think it starts with there, and that sets the tone for, hey, we're a professional outfit. And then beyond that, it shows up in the way that the team kind of behaves and the way that they operate our pits and how serious they take it. But let's not discount the fact that, in off-road, we're still 70 to 75% volunteer on our team.
Sure.
I mean, this race, I've got 42 crew members here to pit the truck, all the way to Reno. And, I want to say 7, maybe 10 of the guys are paid crew, and the rest is all volunteer.
Right.
My main fueler, he's been fueling the truck for, I think, going on 10 years now. And he works for a really successful garage door company, and he takes time off to be at every single race, and that's just what he enjoys and loves. But he's committed and dedicated to running my fuel truck, and you can't have a team without that kind of dedication and people that are committed to your vision and the direction that you want to take the program. And I'm forever grateful for all of our volunteers and even our paid guys that work so hard to pull off what we do.
Yeah, it's pretty remarkable. I mean, it's funny because I always use the stupid analogies, and it's like, we're putting on a war, and it attracts a certain type of person, right? Mm-hmm. And it's the type of person, especially volunteer-wise, who, wants to challenge themselves. And, maybe their role is not to drive the car, maybe it's to fuel. And you find these people who are like, I'm going to be the best damn fueler. Mm-hmm. I'm going to live, breathe, and eat it. And that's one of my favorite things about this culture is finding these people that are just, very passionate and very intelligent, and in this environment, they're like, all right, I know what to do. Right. Like they thrive in it, the pressure, and the stress, and like, this isn't, especially this race, it's hot, this is the hottest race of the year. You're triple digits the whole way. So like, cool. You're going to fuel. Great. It's 110. You're in a fueling apron and a helmet. And, you're
in a 3-layer fire suit.
Right? Standing out in the middle of the desert, and you got to be suited up, generally like 30 minutes before the truck's there. And then you get the truck out, and it's like, cool, now you're moving on to the next pit. So it's a lot of work. It's a lot of commitment. And it's not like, hey, you're going to go out and put up the umbrella and have some Mai Tais and, oh, here comes the truck. We'll just do a dump can. It's very serious, and you can win and lose on fuel stops.
For sure. There's a lot of risk involved too with pressurizing, 110 gallons in less than a minute. I mean, so there's some risk there that they have to take serious. But I think you said it best, is that what really fuels our teams is these guys are passionate. And they bring that passion. They want to do well. And, they're out there in 100-degree heat in their 3-layer fire suit with their helmet on, with their apron on, sweating their brains out, and they fuel the truck and they get it in and out in under a minute. And, everybody's high-fiving and yee-hawing, and they're backpacking the truck, and they're, hightailing it up the road to get to the next pit in time. So, yeah, these guys are definitely the heroes and the warriors of our sport.
Yeah, no, it's pretty cool. So, you're also you're building UTV parts. Talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, it's one of those things where, when we're building a Talon, we manufacture them and build them in-house in my race shop, the Proctor Racing Group. And if you're going to invest in the engineering and, designing these suspension parts and designing a safe cage that's lightweight, if we're going to invest all that engineering, let's take those costs and be able to share it with, grassroots level racers that are going to go out and race, the District 38 races, or, some of the smaller 150-mile races that are in SoCal and Nevada. And so that's what we've done with the J-Sport side-by-side brand. It's J's for Japanese, and it's kind of a tuner play, the J-Sport is. And so, yeah, we make Talon parts for anything that you want to go racing with, you want to go play with. We make Talon parts, and that's what we know, and we're going to stick to that. I don't think there's any plans to get into making any of these other snowmobile brands, but we've been manufacturing it and, love taking care of our customers. And recently we had a big success on the on the car building front. One of our Talons that we built and shipped to Australia won the Fink race in the Pro NA class.
Nice.
So that was a nice little, I guess you call it resume builder, or, hang another flag in the race shop type of thing. Hey, we won in Australia. We've won in Mexico. We've won the Mint 400 the last 2 years.
Totally.
So, yeah, we've been able to collect some hardware for these Talons in the first 3.5, almost 4 years, and we couldn't be more happier with the progress of those Talons.
Yeah, that's the interesting thing too about building off-road race cars. Like, you can build the perfect car, but if you don't have the driver to go along with it, it doesn't mean anything. Like, there's plenty of builders out there who have really good cars but haven't got that win to prove their platform.
Yep.
And unfortunately, the win on Sunday, buy on Monday, like, that's real, right? Especially for race cars. Like, people look at, what platform's winning, what platform's consistently winning, and they're like, okay, right? And in UTVs, obviously Polaris was the biggest player in the market. But, as of recently, they've been challenged, by Can-Am, by Honda, and by Kawasaki. And I welcome that competition, and
it's healthy for the sport. It really is.
I think it is. And what I really like is, just like with Honda being different, Kawasaki's a different platform, so it's not the same car, from every manufacturer. They're different, and Sunday there's a new Can-Am dropping, which I'm excited about. So, we'll see, the evolution, I'm sure, is going to continue.
Attention Off-Road Nation. The Unlimited Off-Road Racing Championship comes roaring through Parker, Vegas, and Barstow in 2024. It's 3 of the most prestigious and competitive off-road races in the sport. It all starts with the return of the Parker 400 in beautiful Arizona, January 10th through the 14th. Then it's the biggest, baddest, most grueling off-road race on the planet. The BF Goodrich Tires Mint 400 comes roaring back into Sin City, Las Vegas, March 6th through the 10th. And finally, the climactic conclusion of the Unlimited Off-Road Racing Championship, the California 300, returns to Barstow, October 2nd through the 6th. Visit UnlimitedOffRoadRacing.com for complete details. The 2024 Unlimited Off-Road Racing Championship is here.
And it's funny in talking about Honda. And again, I don't want to get you in trouble. You don't have to say anything. I'm just speculating, right? Because I know Honda's this company that, obviously Asian companies tend to be very conservative, right? And they're very methodical and very planned, whereas, Americans, we're cowboys, right? And we're like, hey, we'll do this. Oh, shit, we didn't, you know what I mean? We didn't think that out, right? And, it's a blessing. And
we'll fix it later.
Yeah, we'll fix it. It's just a recall, you know what I mean? So, it's a blessing and a curse, but, I'm interested to see, when and if Honda, take some of the tech that they have in engines and other forms of racing, and they're like, okay, we're gonna go ahead and do this, right? Because when you look at the company as a whole, and specifically the engine technology as it relates to small engines, that could be in UTVs, like we've all looked at, engine swapping and what is that path, and what do you do, and so on and so forth. And it's very interesting because when the new Pro R came out, the first call I got on it was Crawford, was our engine builder, and he said, hey, when you get one of those things, I want to build an engine for you. I'm like, dude, I go, I know where you're going with this. I know how much horsepower could be gained out of a 4-cylinder engine if you supercharged it or added a twin turbo. But I'm like, just chill out, because I also know that very quickly turns into a $40,000 UTV engine, or more, right?
Sure.
So I'm excited. I'm interested to see where it goes because, as these vehicles get, faster, you look at the production line of where that engine tech comes from. And obviously Honda has a very, very deep pool of that, of those resources.
Yeah, look, so I mean, you look at Honda, they're the largest engine manufacturer in the world. And you can't hope and hope that they're going to come out with something that's pretty innovative in the future. I'm not speaking for Honda when I say this, but I'm speaking as my own personal opinion. I think where you're going to see the tech in side-by-side racing is you're going to see hybrid electric. You're going to see, this is just my speculation, is that you'll see some electric front drive units.
Sure.
But you're still going to have your engine-driven power with electric drive units, and it'll be a hybrid electric. How are they going to charge the hybrid batteries? Who knows? It could be fuel cell. It could be off the main engine. But I think really that's where you'll see the tech go. I mean, there's a lot of companies out there going to try to go all electric, but I don't think just yet. Because all electric in the desert, where are you going to charge those things? See, just say you're out playing around at Barstow. Where are you going to charge this?
Sure.
You have to go over to the Holiday Inn and sit over there for 30 minutes. It doesn't work for our culture, right? So hybrid electric is what I'm forecasting is kind of the future, like drivetrain tech for the sport.
Sure.
The other thing I can kind of share, and again, this, I'm not speaking for American Honda. I'm speaking just personally as a team owner, team manager, is that we're working on some programs right now to be in Dakar in 2025.
Nice.
What does that look like? Well, look at Honda's engines. What are available? And if you want to go compete in T3, the T3 Red Bull team with Mitch Guthrie, he's running a Volkswagen engine. I think it's a 1.5 liter twin turbo Volkswagen engine with a real racing gearbox.
Right.
Well, Honda's got a 1.5 twin turbo out of a Civic Si that makes, a little over 200 horsepower. Well, that's the proper packaging to go T3 racing in Dakar with a real gearbox. So, hopefully those plans come together. We're working with, a team of European engineers right now. The Euros want to go racing in a Talon. The Talon's not available in the Europe market. It's only a North American product at this point. So we're trying to kind of bridge that gap for the racers that have raced bikes in Dakar forever in European and South America, and try to put something together to go out and, battle the Red Bull T3s and whoever else is out there.
That's cool. That'll be really, really cool to see, and especially too, like, Dakar in particular, like now, both Brabeck and Casey Curry have won that race. It's really changed the tide of, like, the Europeans understanding how deep the talent pool is here. And I think we're just on the cusp of that. And, I was obviously Sarah Price is, making a move to go race in Dakar, right? And I was talking to her down at Darren Skilton's rally, and it was, it's like this thing of, like, the timing, right? Like, it's time for Team America. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? It's time for, American teams to go there and start putting it down. And again, just the wave of talent that we have, the Seth Quinteros, the Mitch Guthries, like those guys over there. I had the experience of, standing next to them a few years ago when the first race in Saudi was, because I was very curious as to how that was going to be executed. And, I'm standing at the end of the stage, and it's like Cyril Dupre and all these, all the heavies who've won Dakar before, and Mitchie's coming in, and they're like, I don't understand. How is this kid so fast? So I'm like, well, surprise, because we got 100 of these kids, and they started racing at 6 years old. So by the time they're 20, they have all the seat time. And so they're incredibly talented, at a much, much younger age than we've ever seen before. So I think that's really exciting. You touched on the hybrid engine thing, and it was interesting to see what Toyota did recently with, I think they did it with the Tacoma and maybe the RAV4, where it was like, hey, here's a hybrid engine. And we're just like, oh, cool, a hybrid engine. And they're like, but we have the electronics actually giving more power to the engine, when it needs it. And everybody's like, well, wait, what? It's not just fuel saving, It's like, no, we're taking advantage of what an electric engine is capable of. And it was interesting talking to the engineers, and they explained it to me. I'm like, oh man, this is badass. We could definitely use this in off-road. It's a power assist, basically, right? So imagine, being, running your whatever 6-cylinder vehicle, and you got a little button and it's a turbo, but instead of a turbo, it's electric torque, right? You're like, there you go. Like, that's pretty badass.
Yeah, so you'd have the button. So we'll call it a push to pass. We use IndyCar terminology because we're a Honda team, right? So a push to pass is going to give you that burst of electric power. But even beyond that, you're going to have an ECU, a smart ECU, that's going to know that when you're on the binders and you're braking into a corner, and then as soon as you apply throttle, it's going to know that you need to get out of the hole, and it'll apply that electric
Instant
power
torque
to pull the front tires through the corner.
Yeah.
And then as soon as you get up to speed on the lake bed and you're going 100 miles an hour, it'll start recharging that, and you'll take off your torque because you don't need it.
Yeah.
Recharge. You're on the binders again, and then it'll apply the torque again.
Well, swipe my card because I want one, right? Like, once that concept was explained to me, I'm like, all of a sudden, I'm like, oh, I'm a big fan of hybrid engines, right? Yeah. Because it's a superior performance. We saw a little bit of a preview of it with the Audi team, in Dakar, and unfortunately they had a bad time, for lots of different reasons. But that's an exciting tech, and again, like, proving it in racing and then having it end up in consumer UTVs, I think would be pretty badass. But I want to coin it like push to rip, right?
Push to rip, yeah, for sure. Yeah, I think the last thing with that technology before it can be real is it's just got to be some durability testing with shock loads.
Sure.
So it's proven in road racing. Audi's kind of proven it in Dakar. So if we can get the shock load test passed for a trophy truck, I think the sky's the limit at that point with all-wheel drives.
Nice.
Pretty exciting. I do want to go back to, Dakar and the way that the Euros kind of view us. They view this deep talent pool that we have. But even beyond that, just based on conversations that I had dealing with Europe recently, they're starting to, in the past they viewed Western off-road culture. We're kind of like the cowboys, right?
Yeah.
And all of a sudden now you're seeing this shift with the Europeans. South Americans had some respect for us, but the Europeans are now starting to respect our off-road technology and engineering, and they're starting to say, oh, wait a second, we understand rally, we understand road racing, but we've got to go to the Americans for off-road. And I think we're at a really cool pivotal time for that, where off-road can really start to be a global sport.
Yeah, I agree. Obviously we're pretty invested into it, but no, I think that I've had a lot of conversations both with WRC and the FIA and the different European organizations, and I think that the success of Formula One has shown them that they can be successful in the American market, and that there can be this crossover, and that we don't have to be separate silos, right? And for me as a promoter, like, I look at that and I'm like, I want our best talent to go over to Dakar and be successful. And even other things like going all the way back to, doing a ton of work in American Rally and Gymkhana, and working with, Ken and Travis and, a whole host of rally drivers. Like, I'd personally like to see that someday too, as, American drivers racing in WRC. Definitely WRC is going to have a round here, and I think it's Tennessee. But I think that, obviously America's a big place. They could have a couple rounds here.
For sure.
So I think that the cool thing about the success of Formula One is it's opened everybody's eyes to the idea that motorsports are international, right? And that even though F1 is a very Eurocentric product, that there are Americans here that like it and want to consume it. And it also helps that we're the biggest automotive market in the world, right? So from a business standpoint, they all look at it and go, yeah, we'd like to crack that market. I don't care if it's VW or Audi or whoever. It's like, sure, they're selling some cars here, but, I'm sure they look at the F-150 sales and they go, that'd be nice.
Yeah, I think the crazy thing with Formula One, becoming popular in the U.S. is now you have housewives across America that can name the top 10 drivers in Formula One. I mean,
Sure.
that kind of shows you where the sport is at right now. It's kind of widely accepted.
Yeah, and it gives us an opportunity that we've never had before because, we can take advantage of that because, ultimately I look at Formula One and I think, I'm very, I'm a student of the business side of it. And so I look at it with like glee, kind of like, okay, this is cool because I know what it can prove for us. But, in my back pocket, I also know like we're a truck nation, right? Mm-hmm. This is America. We're blue collar. We're a truck nation and we race trucks. So ultimately, I think, no matter what, we end up winning, So I'm excited about it. Like I'm excited to see, the evolution of this truck that you just built. And, now I'm like, even more, I'm kind of like, okay, I'm going to be, driving home tomorrow going, okay, where is the Honda truck? Right. So it's.
Well, just know this race is a test for us.
Yeah, of course.
There's a lot of development that still needs to happen.
And this is a great test. We were talking a little bit earlier about, the heat, the pressure. I mean, I've learned so much about technology from this particular race, specifically with, the fuel heating up, right? And
vapor lock's a real thing.
Yeah, like I was like, what vapor lock? That sounds like a disease, you get from a girl, right?
It is.
but it's like, it's like this thing of like, oh yeah, dummy. Like if your fuel compartment heats to a certain level, you get vapor lock and your engine won't run, right? So it's all these things that like, the extremities of off-road racing bring out and remind you that there is nothing that can't break.
For sure. And the other thing too is it's so hard to go out and replicate an off-road race in a test session. We can go out and we test our brains out. We test for durability, all these things. But at the end of the day, you can't replicate, driving in blinding dust, the heat soaking that happens over an 8, 10, 12-hour period race. Constantly, it's just hard to replicate that. So there's no better battleground to test your new race truck than in a race.
Well, I look forward to, obviously your success, let's say, and you guys proving out this new truck. It's going to be really exciting. Thank you for doing this and giving us the time.
Yeah, my pleasure. We're excited for the future, and we hope we can kind of quiet some critics out there and bring something a little different to trophy truck racing in the U.S.
Awesome. Thanks, man.
Thank you.